And if I can exemplify some of it, that includes importing weapons from South Africa's apartheid regime, the armed loyalist paramilitaries that carried out hundreds of killings from 1988 until 1994. It includes almost 400 killings carried out whilst in uniform by the British Army and the RUC. The vast majority of them unarmed, uninvolved civilians. And of those combatants that were killed on the Republican side, there was ample opportunity to make safe and effective arrest under the rule of law, and someone made the decision to discard that and to kill them. And they are the facts. And so what happened with all of those cases during the conflict was the RUC investigated the killings along with the British Ministry of Police. There was no independence to that. There was no publication of the outcomes of those investigations other than to recommend to the public prosecutor no one should face trial. And that's what happened. And then what happened was the only vehicle that opened the families to find out anything, and really only to receive a death certificate, was an inquest. So all these cases get directed to an inquest. Now, what happened is that in parallel to that, what the British usually did was make a family wait 10, 15, 20 years till the inquest came. So it was wearing down families psychologically. It was hoping that they'd go away and they wouldn't bother. In between that, we took the British to court in Europe, in Strasbourg, under the European Convention of Human Rights, citing that the investigative mechanisms they used in the north of Ireland were not effective, and they were in default of the Article 2 obligations to investigate killings. So the British government have been caught out because Europe has said they are in violation, they have breached the law, they have breached the covenant, they have breached their legal obligations, and they need to investigate these cases properly. So within the context of the peace process about truth and justice and wanting all these matters to be addressed, what they have actually done is they've reversed. They've blocked down families from getting access to truth, they've destroyed documents, they've frustrated coroners' courts, and they haven't delivered to anyone. So let me maybe just give you an example of this in a human context of some of the cases. George Slane was murdered in September 1988 in West Belfast. He awoke to the door being sledgehammered in by 4 loyalist gunmen. 2 of them entered the house and they shot him 7 times on the stairs as he tried to defend his young family up the stairs and his wife with a set of ladders that were on the stairs from when he'd been decorating the house. They left and they got into a car and they drove off, and as they drove off out one part of the street, the RUC and the military drove in to another part of the street. Neighbours said the gunmen have went off, you need to go after them, and they wouldn't. They drove off and across and through a set of gates that are normally closed 24/7 and which have cameras on top of them. And the cameras were switched off, the gates were open for 10 minutes, and they closed as soon as they drove through them back into the loyalist Shankle area. What transpired was that George Slane's details had been given to the loyalists, and the RUC and the British Intelligence Service had incited his murder. They had provided the information and they provided the weapon. The person they provided it to was Brian Nelson, who was a British Army agent, placed inside the UDA, and was the Chief Intelligence Officer inside the UDA. The UDA at that time was not a prescribed illegal organisation. The British government had refused to prescribe it. So, Brian Nelson was also the person that provided the details and incited the murder of human rights lawyer Pat Finnegan. And so, when the families go to court and they ask for these documents and they ask for disclosure, and the judges now supporting the families are asking them, the British government say, we don't have any money, we can't afford to have police officers looking at these past cases, they're too long, they're too old, we shouldn't be dealing with it, we should move on. And they're supported in that by the DUP. So when Martin McGuinness pulled down the executive and collapsed the institutions, what he basically said was that the DUP and the British government are not fulfilling their legal obligations to hold proper inquiries and investigations, and what they're actually doing is they're colluding to prevent them from happening. And that's what's going on in the north. So in 1998, when we had a peace accord and we hoped everything would change for the better, it didn't, and it hasn't, particularly for the families. And what's at stake here is they have, on one hand, you have a Brexit that's happening, that's destabilising the peace process in the island, and on the other hand, you have all of these failures to implement a rights-based society, and they are really putting in jeopardy the peace process. But brought into all of this is the RUC,